Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. Today, this episode is brought to you by 40 Accounting. 40 Accounting is built to help small business and medium-sized business with their accounting, bookkeeping, even file your taxes. If you want to learn more, go to 40accounting.com. With that, we're very excited today to have with us Ken Rusk, entrepreneur, author, advocate for blue-collar careers. He's best known for his book, Blue Collar Cash. Love your work, secure your future, and find happiness for life. He promotes this idea of financial success and personal fulfillment. Of course, we're going to talk more about this today. But Ken, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Thanks, Carl. Really appreciate having me. Thanks a lot.
So Ken, we're just going to dive into, I think, one of the things that's missed from your book that you were mentioning, right? Whereas there's this, your book's called Blue Collar Cash. And I think there is this kind of belief that people go in reading your book of, hey, this is about the hard struggle, right, of blue collar, and you're literally a ditch digger, right, to begin your career, but you have found a way to be successful and to create wealth. It's the dichotomy, right, that's missed often in society, that just because you're blue collar doesn't mean you can't have financial wealth and freedom and peace and prosperity, which you've been able to create. So Ken, let's start back to your beginning, right? When you were ditch digging and you were in the very beginning of your career, did you ever envision you'd be where you're at today back then?
Well, it was interesting because when I was younger, so I had four brothers and we lived in a very small house in Amherst, Ohio. And my father was a Marine and he ran the house like a barracks, like a Marine barracks, like a platoon, if you will. So for us, it was always about do it and get it. I mean, he could give us the basics. He could give us shelter and clothing and food and that kind of thing. But if we wanted more than that, I remember I wanted an aluminum baseball bat when they first came out. I know I'm dating myself that a little bit, but so I needed that 30 or 40 bucks to go get it. And I just remembered it was so cool to me that I could trade 15 hours of my labor for enough money to go buy that bat. And so it was always kind of a trade labor for things kind of thing. So while I didn't know that I would be where I am today, I knew that there was a formula, which is you work so much, you get so much in return, and then you can create something for yourself. So I think the goals, or the timed pathways, as I call them, they just got bigger. They got more expensive over time. But I always kind of thought, well, if I can control my own destiny, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it work as long as I'm not relying on other people to help me with that. So that's kind of how it came about.
It's interesting you bring about your father and having that discipline. It sounds like you grew up then with that discipline, right, in your house, and so how did that carry over for you afterwards, right? Once you got out of the house.
Well, my father, I like to call him the imperfect perfectionist because when I was shining the shoes, I had to do them over a couple, 3 times sometimes. And when I washed the car and waxed the car, I had to take a toothbrush to it and get all the wax residue out. And, the white walls weren't always white enough and I had to go back and redo them. But there's a lot of lessons from that. There's a mentorship that you don't even know you're getting at the time, Most of the time his perfectionism was a good thing. Sometimes it wasn't. When you're making your bed for the 3rd time because it's not tight enough like they did in the Marines, I mean, that can get a little old, but it certainly prepares you for, if you're going to do something in this world, do it right. If you're going to do something, put all of your effort into it. If it doesn't work out the first time, try again and improve it. So that was an interesting way to grow up, but I don't know that I would trade it for anything. He's gone now and I miss him every day. But I think parenting is something, Carl, that is it's so undervalued anymore with the amount of power and the impression and the imprinting that you give your kids. You're downloading everything into their little brains, and so that I think it's important that we always keep that in the forefront of our minds.
It's interesting, your story. I just recently finished David Goggins' book, Never Finished. I don't know if you had a chance to read that or listen to that. It's great audiobook for those who haven't heard it beforehand. But he also, for those who are familiar, I just wanted to just briefly touch on this just to compare to what you were saying. He got out of his really tough house in Buffalo, New York. He goes to Indiana, and his, I think it's his Uncle Jack, he would call him, basically that was his grandfather, and his grandfather did exactly what you talked about. He put him through every day. He has a set of tasks. Now, when he was a young boy, he didn't understand it, right? He didn't understand, why do I have to make this look so perfect, right? He was frustrated.
Right.
He was angry about it. But when he got to the point when he wanted to become a Navy SEAL and he had to lose much weight, he went back and embraced it because he realized he needed that discipline, that sense of order, that and also to have pride, if you may, about your work, about what you're doing on a daily basis. Starting out with simply like making your own bed, doing that very basics behind it. So let's move forward for you from that perspective. Speaking of that, if I hate, sometimes I usually like the word pride, but there is something about having satisfaction about your work. So when you carry for yourself about that sense of work and it being something good, how have you been able to carry that over into your company now in leading that and the people you've been with?
Well, first off, one of the things that I know is that, even around our house, we by the time we got to our second and third house, we had a big yard. We had a lot of maintenance to it. And my father couldn't do that all on his own. So he shared all those tasks with all of us. And he wanted the yard to be beautiful. He wanted it to be just a fabulous place to see. And so we all worked hard on that, and we all shared in the building of that. And I think that's the one thing that I took was, entrepreneurs, the one thing you have to be careful about is your own self-limiting ego sometimes. I mean, you can say at the end of the week, today's Friday, you can say at the end of today, oh man, I worked 70 hours this week and I did this and I fixed that and I built this and I changed that and I yelled at this guy and I motivated this. Yeah, you're right, but you also have high blood pressure and you're pre-diabetic and you don't know who your kids' names are. And, so you really have to be careful. And the lessons that I took into my world was I can't do it all. And not only that, but I don't want to. I didn't start my business so it could run me, so I could be a prisoner of it. I started my business so I could work on it, not in it. And so I'll stand in front of my staff of 200 and I'll say, listen, I can't get what I want, nor can my company get what it wants or needs until all of you get what you want first.
Mm.
And I absolutely mean that, Carl, because, businesses are linear creatures. Like you have an input from the left, and that input might be a people or machinery, or you create a service or a skill, or you create a software, or you create a product, and then there's a price attached to that. Somebody sells it, it's delivered, and then hopefully there's profit. Well, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you're always at the very end of that line. So I learned early on, if I'm going to win, I need to have all my people win for themselves first, and then I'll eventually win in the end.
Okay, that's a really profound thing that you said there, and I think it's missed by most company owners, right? Um, you've learned the importance of understanding what it is for your employees. So, give an example of what that means. How do you practically put that into purpose, where you actually do care about what's in it for them?
Well, first off, I am a fierce believer in timed pathways. First, one of the things I do, and even when I speak, I do the same thing. I want you to lose the word goal. Get it out of your vocabulary. I want you to lose the word wish, dream, and hope. I want you to get those out of your vocabulary. Not that they're bad words, okay? But they don't accomplish specifically something. They get you thinking about something, but the problem is I need you to go from think to do, okay? And sometimes there's 3 miles of bad road between thinking and doing, right? So for me, it was all about I'm going to seriously motivate, if not force, most of the people within our office to be chasing something for themselves. I want them to work for themselves first and for me and the company second. And so the only way I know that's going to happen is if I can see that they're physically chasing something or anticipating something. And that could be, the next new car, that could be, saving for a house, that could be saving for education, that could be learning another language. I mean, whatever they want to do, taking a photography class, losing some weight, reestablishing a relationship with their mother or their kids, whatever. I need to know that you're chasing something, because if you are and you're winning for yourself, then the company's going to win eventually, especially if there's enough of you doing that at the same time. It's almost like a parallel path of their goals and our goals, their timed pathways and the company's timed pathways. So for me, it's all about if you're winning within my organization, and if you can say, wow, I can get what I want for myself with and through this company, then I think you've got something there. And I think too many bosses, owners or managers, whatever you want to call them, I think they still live on this in this world of the skyscraper where they're at the top floor and there's all these people below them, and they win no matter what. And I don't believe that. I think your people have to win, the culture has to be great, and then overall the company wins in the end.
So, once again, what you do is not traditional. It's not what most companies do. They tend to, I'm paying you, so you have to do something for me, right?
Right.
That's generally view of many CEOs, business owners, et cetera, right? There's just I'm trading this exchange, and that's all there is, right? That's a part of it. So when you bring in and recruit and hire somebody who's worked in that traditional environment and they bring it into your environment, what is their response?
A lot of times in our interviews, I'll spend more time. See, I mean, I've hired 2,000, probably 300 people in my career, okay, in the last 40 years. And what I will tell you is the interviews have changed. I mean, early on, there were so many people coming in for one job that you could pick amongst whoever. And the interviews were a lot more like, well, this is your job duties, and this is your uniform, and this is your where you punch your time clock, and here's our hours, and here's our vacation pay, and all the specifics. Well, now I think it's changed a little bit because people have so many choices and options of where they can work that now it's almost like they come in and say, hey, dude, what's in it for me to work for you? You know what I mean? Which is a completely different thing. Now, you can either bristle at that and go, oh my God, how dare they say that? Or you can answer that question
Hmm.
and you can embrace that. And you can say, if I can get this answer to this gentleman or this gal, I'm going to have something here because what they're asking me is, can they make their life work for themselves there? So yeah, well, our interviews are a lot more about why are you here? What do you hope to accomplish? What's your life looking like? What do you want it to look like? What's the next 6 months, 16 months, 60 months look like? And then how can we get that down on paper in a specific way? How do we publicize that for everyone to see so that there's sharing involved? And then how do we go get those things that you want one at a time?
So, Ken, one of the things you've been able to do here, because you shared with me, and once again, this will get released at a different timing. But as you're in Naples, Florida, right now, away from your company physically, which is in Ohio, and it's still running, it's still operating, right? It's still being effective. One of the hardest things I see with many companies is that being able to let go and enabling that next set of managers, that next set of leaders to help do things so you can actually have your time away, and not be you're working on the business still, but you're not necessarily once again in the business behind what's taking place.
Right.
How did you learn that? How did you learn to let go, right? So you can actually develop, create leaders. And one additional question is, did you hire them in or did you train them in to become leaders?
Well, so there's something called an entrepreneur that I think I coined this phrase, although I know I didn't. But there's an entrepreneur who takes all the risks and does and owns the business and does all that. Then there's an entrepreneur, which is someone who acts like an owner within your company, but isn't necessarily an owner, but they control their own division. They share in the profits of that division. They create the results in that division. So I try to find as many entrepreneurs as I can, as quickly as I can. And one of the things that I say is, look, I'm one person. There's no way I can do it all. There's no way I know everything. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone knows things that they know things that I don't know. Why can't I get the benefit of seeing all these bright minds working in concert? So for me, it was early on recognizing that I wanted a life. I wanted to golf. I wanted to raise my daughter. I wanted to take my boat out or my cars or whatever I wanted to do. And I certainly wasn't going to do that working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. So right off the bat, I said, as I grow, I'm going to divide and keep dividing and growing, keep dividing and growing, because what most people don't realize is you got to be careful because as a entrepreneur, I have stories about this, but you can be your own self limiter. And what happens sometimes is if you allow the people around you to have a say in what's happening, man, get out of the way because they're going to take your company way further than you can take it yourself. And then if they're sharing in the success of that, that to me is the ultimate prize for me. I don't get up every day and think about the next ditch I'm going to dig or the next house I'm going to fix or whatever, the next truck I'm going to buy, dump truck or tool or whatever. I wake up every day saying, who's chasing what? How close are they? How are we celebrating that? What are they doing next? And how much fun is that for everybody to know that everybody else is chasing something, anticipating something for themselves and rounding out their whole body, their whole person. I mean, I've had people that have gone to Europe in their 20s. Most people don't go to Europe until they're 50 or 60. Um, but we forced that issue. And they come back and they're like, wow, I would have never, ever done this had we not had this mechanism to push. And, you know, it's really cool to see people experiencing things they never thought they could do. And, they want to give me credit for that. I may have had 3% to do with their goal. They had the other 97%. Um, but it's fun to watch. And as an owner, why would you want to come to work other than to see that kind of stuff, rather than just get sucked into the daily grind or the normal noise of a business, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, I love that. So let's hit on a bit of this. Once again, kind of the core of this. Once again, go back to this dichotomy of the blue collar, right? And I'll say these limitations and these beliefs. You and I both know today that being a skilled tradesman can be one of the most lucrative jobs. It didn't used to be this way necessarily, but with the scarcity, right, that there is today of these type of positions, it's become a great place to be, right? If you are an electrician or a plumber, or you name your specific role and job. So how have you seen that change much over the past decade, 2 decades, where people are finally realizing, I don't have to go to college, and I can still have a successful career and opportunity by going after quote unquote these blue collar jobs?
Well, one of the problems with your statement is the fact that when you say, are people realizing they don't have to go, the problem is the parents are controlling that mindset.
Mm,
Okay? So you don't have a 15 or 16-year-old that's going, hey, you know what? I'm worldly enough to think that I can just go be an electrician and start my own company. They're still really under the purview, or I should say under the thumb sometimes, of their parents. And it's the parents, it's not their fault. They've been groomed to think it's college or else my kid's going to flip burgers or work at a laundromat. You know what I mean? And that is the shame of it all, Carl, because when I was in high school, you could walk down the hallway and there's a guy over there changing a transmission on a Mustang, and there's a gal over there doing someone's hair. Or there was someone over here learning a cooking class. Someone was milling a leg for a table in wood shop or wiring an outlet. You could go see and experience, and you could accidentally discover how cool these jobs were. Well, someone decided, let's get rid of all that and let's fill those rooms with computers, which is fine because we needed to learn that. But why did it have to be a binary choice? Why did it have to be one or the other, right? So that's the first problem that you have. The second problem that you have is then you have kids that instead of getting out in the yard and building tree forts and breaking things and fixing them and all that kind of stuff, they're trying to build Minecraft on their cell phone, right? And that's not the same experience. You and I
correct.
both know that, right?
That's right.
So if you pair that lack of experience, that life experience, up with the disappearance of shop class, and then you have these colleges like we talked earlier, man, are they good at shaming you into thinking if you don't go their way, you're going to be a loser the rest of your life. I mean, they're so good at it. And, I'm not an anti-college guy. If you're going to work on my shoulder so I can get back out on the golf course as a surgeon, I want you to know everything there is to know about a knife before you come at me with it. I get that. But so many of these colleges are allowing these kids to just learn these really random degrees that they're never going to use in the real world. And even the ones that do get full degrees, there's a statistic out there that only 33% of degrees ever get used ever. So that's a whole lot of expensive education for it not being used. So there's this triple threat or this perfect storm that's working against the blue collar fields. And I just have to tell you that there's a silver lining in everything, because where supply is high and demand is, or supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. And so if everyone's getting out of these trades, then the smart person is the contrarian thinker and gets back in where all the activity is. And that's what you're starting to see now. However, we have a long way to go before parents will think of their kids as successful if they have their own plumbing company, even if it's really successful. So the parents' ego thing is something we really got to get through. But it's working. It's slowly starting to turn.
That's a really, I think, an excellent point, right? Once again, is where a lot of the success, right, of the child, so to speak, the young adult who's coming up, is they're trying to please, or they don't have a choice to please their parents, right? Because they have to go ahead and head in this direction. And you and I both know, and I unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I enjoy a Starbucks coffee from time to time. A lot of these people who are sitting behind the counter there have college degrees in a non-specific skill. One of the things I was fortunate when I was getting out, somebody said to me, get a degree and people think they know what you know. Yeah. So I ended up getting an accounting degree. I was looking at engineering, accounting, or education. Those were the three things I looked at. Why? Because hey, I think I get this investment that I'm going to make is going to be worthwhile, right? To get a return so I can make more money, right? At the result of this transaction, so to speak, going through that. Now, don't get me wrong, there's amazing people who are in these other things, but we won't go into it because we don't have enough time. But it's really interesting if those who aren't familiar with, there's some legislation that's being proposed right now that might completely revamp the way that student loans are being given, meaning loans have to be given towards things that are actually going to, quote unquote, create some type of return towards society.
Got it.
And this could really revamp and cut in half, perhaps, the number of public institutions that are out there. Maybe we can just briefly, Ken, and I know you're familiar with it, and you just mentioned just recently on Fox News, and so I know you're in the know, and people go to you from your insights and your connection on this. What do you think about that? What is your insight on some of this potential legislation that may completely change, once again, the way it's been going on for the past 34 years?
Well, I just look at it in any other context, okay? Let's assume that I went to college and I decided that I wanted to open a surfboard repair shop in Ohio. That's a really bad decision because there's no surfing in Ohio, right?
That's right.
And that's just a bad decision. So I have to be held accountable to that decision. No one's going to bail me out of that decision, right? That was a dumb call, and I made it. There's my money. I got to find a way to get out of this thing. So I think any business, and this is what drives me crazy about colleges and how they work sometimes. Any business that sold a product where it was financed by the government, and yet that product didn't have to work, would go out of business.
That's right.
Okay. Right. So it's the same thing here. If colleges had either a stake in the loans or they had a stake in the future of that student, where, hey, you can't study, Eastern European language translation, and yes, you can convince me there's a job waiting for you in that field afterwards. That's the difference. Okay. They're taking the money, they're growing their campuses, they're building all these buildings, they're becoming these behemoths of society. They have billions of dollars in their endowment funds, and yet they aren't responsible one iota for the product that they sell. It really is an odd thing because their business is first, and I suppose public servants second. So I am all in favor of the accountability for everyone. I'm going to study the law because I'm going to go to law school, and there's going to be I'm going to get a law degree, and I'm going to be a lawyer when I get out. That makes sense. Same thing with teaching, engineering, accounting, architecture, whatever. But no, I should not be able to just go out and study just some random thing and play beer pong for 4 years and hope that society is going to fix me when I get out.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
See that's where you hit is the nail. Is like if you choose right to go into an area right that has bad economics, that shouldn't be the taxpayers' fault, right?
exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can't convince you can't convince a bank of a bad business plan and have them give you money.
That's right.
So why can you do it in college? I mean, if I went to a business, if I again take that same example, if I went to my bank and said, "Hey, man, I'm going to open up a surfboard shop in Ohio," I would expect them to give me money. They'd be like, "Are you out of your mind? How is that marketable?" Well, we don't ask our own 17. We will ask a 30-year-old that question, but we won't ask our own 17-year-olds who don't even have a job and they're borrowing money. I mean, it's ridiculous. So again, I'm all for college specific course, college specific job, and then when you get out, there's your job. All right, and I get it. My daughter is an architect. Good news for us is she didn't have to borrow the money, but there are people that have. And my niece is a skin doctor, and it's amazing because she's got this great job. She's got school loans, but they're helping her pay them off, and they've got a whole partnership, and it's great. But that's the example of how it works.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
there's too many examples of how it doesn't work. And I'll tell you what, Carl, I had this kid. It was the basis for me writing one of the bases for me writing this book. I I had to get my car repaired, and they had to literally tear the whole dashboard out of this car. So I had to rent a car from this guy, and I went down the street to rent. And here comes this guy, the young man from out behind the counter, and he's got a three-piece suit on. I think each piece was from a different suit, but that's okay. And he was talking about he was helping me rent this car, and I had to wait a half an hour in order to get this car because it was just they were preparing it, or whatever. And this kid said to me, goes, I wanted to be a carpenter, and my teachers and my parents and everyone said I had to go to college, and now I have $100,000 in debt. I have a degree I'm not using, and I'm making 26.5 over here at this car dealership or car rental place. When do I get to live? I think I was hoodwinked. And I told him, I said, you know what, pal? All I can tell you is leave this position right now and go become a carpenter because you're going to be way better off in the end.
Yeah,
And there's millions of those stories, Carl. And if I can stop one of them, I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
yeah. It's like the cost of these is like buying a brand new 911 Porsche, a six-figure vehicle and putting it in the garage and never using it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Why would
Yeah,
we do? Why would we ever dream of doing that, right?
yeah.
Just it's the silliest equation. It's interesting you mentioned about going back into and Ken, I CPA by trade, gotten a strategy, operations, et cetera, throughout career, and I've gone back into accounting. Why? Because of supply and demand. There is a massive shortage of CPAs, very similar to as in the construction. Once again, because people didn't go down the trade route, they wanted to go down the whatever route, the different routes. And now it's like I've got a booming business, another booming business, right? Because of supply and demand. It's just literally understanding the market, having a specific trade, and yeah, I'm very grateful of this opportunity, right, of being able to do that. But if I didn't have that skill, it would have taken me years to jump in to do it, right?
Well, and here's the thing. So people ask me all the time, what's your advice on someone getting into the trades right now? I mean, what would they do? Where would they go? And it's real simple. I mean, this is way more simple than it used to be. All you have to do is go to Menards, Home Depot, or Lowe's, or God forbid, all three of them, right? You go to the commercial desk where they sell to contractors, and you say, "Tell me something. What's missing in this town? What is
Mm,
there? Who's retiring soon? Who's got these businesses that because they talk a lot. Okay,
yeah, of course.
I've got a half a dozen examples right now, Carl, of companies that wish that they could retire, but they can't because they have no one to give their companies to, so they're just
Yeah.
closing. And So you go to one of these big box home improvement stores, and they'll tell you, "Oh man, we don't have any painters in this town. They're all disappearing. They're moving out of town, or they're retiring, or whatever. Or we need product distribution trucks, or we need, suppliers, or we need welders, or whatever." They'll tell you. They'll give you the answer. And the other thing is even if you don't necessarily think welding is you can build a company around welders. You can find the
That's right.
welders, and
That's
you
right.
can be the entrepreneur that runs that. Ditch digging was number 99 out of a list of 100 things that I wanted to do. But now I have a company with 200 of them. I'm
Right.
very proud because I started out that way.
Hmm.
And I've built an amazing life for myself and for my employees because of the culture that we've created around this. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can do really well out there, and they don't all require going to a 4-year school. That's for sure.
Ken, I'm going to ask a few of my traditional questions before we head off here. So, from a
Yeah.
business perspective, how do you measure success in your business?
For me, it's all about. I have these two giant black glass boards that are between the bathrooms, and we have these neon magic markers like you'd see on the margarita special of the day at your nearest Mexican restaurant, right? So for you to work there, you have to be chasing something. As I said before, you have to publicly put this up on the board. You
Mm,
know, I'm going to go visit my relatives in Scotland. It's going to cost me $4,000. I'm going to save, $50 a week for 2 years. And I sign it, I date it, and then everyone else gets to see that.
mm,
And then on the other board is a list of all the accomplished goals. I went to Scotland, I built a house, I bought a new car, whatever it is. I improved my life in some way. And so as long as I see that board and that board is active and it's moving and it's live, then I'm happy.
mm.
Okay. Because I know that people are advancing within their life. And some of them you'll see, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals they've hit in the last 10 years, 15 years. So that to me is my happy place, is when I can see that the people within my organization are winning something. And that's what it's all about.
Briefly here, and I'll say this now from the position of you are as a today a business owner, and you're working on the business. What type of habits do you still do to help make sure that things are still running well, even when you're not present?
So, first off, I take care of myself really well. I'm a longevity guy. I get up. I've had the same protein shake for the last 35 years. I keep adding ingredients to it, but I'm grateful. I practice being grateful every morning, looking at my rotating frame of pictures of my family and things I've done and whatever. So to get my own mind right, I think is really, really important. Okay. The habits though. So most of the people in our organization have a salary, but at least 50% of that can be made up in bonuses and that kind of thing. And those bonuses are paid out monthly, quarterly, and annually. We also celebrate everything. We celebrate your birthday. We celebrate your anniversary. We celebrate when your anniversary when you started working here. We celebrate all your accomplishments. We have lots of contests and lots of fun things around the office. So the discipline of creating awesome culture is something I will never let go of. Okay, the habits that build an attractive culture is something I will never ever ever let go of. But I've also designed it in such a way where these financial rewards and the chasing of goals connect with the goals of the company so that there's like a synergy going on. And I will never not, keep lighting the coal underneath that fire to keep that engine running. So my discipline is to create the coolest place I possibly can and watch people win inside of it.
So today, how do you measure success in your personal life?
Well, I'm still chasing a lot of things. When you get good at what I'm telling you to do, when it talks about, visualizing your goals, drawing them out, seeing them very specifically, um, and then hitting those things, you tend to want to repeat that because it's almost like an addiction. You want to keep hitting and winning these goals. And what happens is you start to get 4, 5, 6, 7 of them going at the same time. And
Mm,
what I love about that is some are 6 months, some are 6 years, it just depends. Some are physical things, some are mental things, some are health things. But As long as I know I'm anticipating and chasing something, that's what makes me happy, and that would be my personal measure of success.
It's good. I love that. I really, really like that. That's one of the, I think, biggest challenges, right? When people are no longer in the business, they actually don't know what to do next, right? And what you've shown a good job of is, hey, there's other places I want to go, new destinations, right? New accomplishments, and through that, the activity is where you find the joy, right, of moving towards there. It's not just getting there, but the process of it, right, is what's fun. It's not always fun, right? Sometimes it's a challenge with anybody who knows, like
Not
there's some
always,
hard
but
things,
mostly.
um, so of course I'm going to we recommend everybody to recommend your book Blue Collar Cash for those, and once again those who are listening, Blue Collar Cash by Ken Rusk. What is a book for you that was really instrumental and that you often recommend to others?
Well, there's a few of them. Man's Search for Meaning by Frankl. I would say um, the other one is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a perennial bestseller, but it still works today. I think Traction is a good book for people who want to build companies. I actually think I took Traction and I really dumbed it down into something that is more user friendly, I think, for small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people buy my book in their companies and they have book clubs with them. That's been the most cool thing.
Oh, that's
There were
super cool.
there were three readers that I didn't know about. Well, the first one I did, the young person, 17 to 30 years old, I knew they would buy it, right? And then someone who wanted to transition because they went to college and they don't know why they did and they want to start their own side gig, I knew they would buy it. But the one that surprised me the most was how many companies have bought it and are now using it as a book club within their staffs to create that
Mm,
entrepreneurial energy. So that's
yeah.
been really cool because they'll buy 15, 20 books and they'll take my course, which is called The Path to a Successful Life, and they'll put their people through it. And then now all of a sudden they've got this gel that they never had before and this momentum that they never had before. So that's been a real rewarding thing.
Ken, how can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
So they can go to kenrusk.com, R-U-S-K, kenrusk.com. They can also go at Ken Rusk Official, and you can see what we're doing on Instagram and all those things. I have a wonderful group of guys that help me do that. I could never do it on my own. And so they help me produce and do videos and all that stuff. So you can see me there on all the socials as well.
Ken, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Measure Success podcast today.
Thanks, Carl. I really appreciate it. That was fun. Great conversation.
And to everyone else who's listening, once again, the reason why we continue to get guests like Ken on the show is because of you, the listener, and continuing to give us feedback. And we're just so grateful, once again, for the consistency that we're able to provide. And once again, having great guests like Ken to be on the show. I mean, Ken, your story is awesome. I love it how you're truly walking the talk. And that's uncommon in business. And so congratulations to you. It's been super fun. I hope the opportunity to once again, to come across again, I'm sure we will down the road. And with that, as we always like to say, wishing you the very best and measuring your success. Have a great day.